Picture yourself on the cliff walk in Newport, with the Atlantic Ocean pounding against the rocks far beneath, and rising high overhead are grand estates constructed not for royalty, but for the nation's richest clans. Some shine brightly with refurbished marble interiors and sparkling crystal fixtures, while others stand quietly, closed up, decayed, or overtaken by overgrown foliage. These structures once resonated with the joy of the Vanderbilts, the murmurs of controversies, and sometimes the lingering presences that visitors insist remain. In the coming hours, we'll explore these estates, both the ones that endure majestically and those nearly erased from memory, unraveling the ascent, decline, and eerie remnants of Newport's lavish jewels. If you're into extended features like this, please subscribe and like the video. It truly supports creating more. And as you watch, leave a comment down below. Share your location around the globe, the current time there, and if you'd like, reveal which slice of Newport's history captivates you most. Roots of extravagance. Newport prior to the Gilded Age. Long before Newport symbolized extravagant luxury, before its bluffs were adorned with marble fortresses and French-modeled chateaus, it existed as a humble seaside settlement at Rhode Island's southern edge. Throughout most of the 1700s and into the early 1800s, the city's fame had nothing to do with opulent residences. It thrived as a community of whalers, anglers, and traders whose livelihoods ebbed and flowed with the ocean's rhythms. Vessels departed from its port laden with rum and molasses, and in colonial times it served as a key node in the triangular trade. Yet, much like the unpredictable waters that shaped it, Newport's prosperity proved fickle. By the dawn of the 1800s, it had slipped into obscurity beside powerhouses like Boston or New York. The prosperous days as a maritime hub had waned following the American Revolution, leaving it poised to linger as a serene outpost of docks and salt-worn timber dwellings. Remarkably, though, by the mid-1800s a transformation unfolded. Newport re-emerged, not as a trade hub, but as a leisure destination, a haven for affluent folks fleeing the grimy, crowded metropolises of the Northeast. Envision docking in Newport during the 1830s via steamboat. You'd encounter undulating verdant slopes, a bustling waterfront, and unpretentious colonial abodes, their roofs weathered to a silvery patina by the briny winds. Here and there, however, you'd spot more substantial dwellings starting to emerge, seasonal retreats erected by planters from the south and tycoons from the north. They weren't the vast chateaus that would later emblemize the Gilded Age, but they represented the beginnings. Every such home declared an intention. This spot offered fresh breezes, relief from Manhattan's swelter, and a chance to flaunt a bit of affluence. Newport set itself apart from other shore communities through its landscape and opportune social shift. The ocean surges impressively onto its rugged shores, yielding panoramas comparable to those of Normandy or the Mediterranean in Europe. Summer winds here provide a refreshing chill compared to New York's oppressive warmth, acting as a pre-modern coolant ages before fans or AC units. Affluent households from the antebellum period started paying attention, journeying by steamer or coach, initially lodging in guest houses or basic inns until they concluded that to make Newport their annual escape, custom-built homes were essential. An initial harbinger of Newport's evolution arrived with the erection of Chateau in the 1850s. This residence, belonging to the Wetmore family, marked one of the inaugural grand manor houses in the area. Its Italianate design contrasted sharply with the plain colonial structures surrounding it. Passing by during that time would feel like discovering a small-scale castle amid a humble fishing hamlet. It heralded a fresh chapter for Newport, where affluence transitioned from being hinted at in unassuming bungalows to being boldly proclaimed through durable rock and exotic imports. Into the 1860s and 1870s, this trend solidified. The Industrial Revolution was forging fortunes faster than ever in American history. Families like the Vanderbilts, the Astors, and many more sought venues not merely for residence, but for flaunting their riches. Newport turned into their showcase. The term cottage acquired a humorous twist. Vast 40 or 50-room behemoths adorned with marble and lighting were dubbed by that humble label. It seemed as though the modest name downplayed the extravagance, a subtle nod that deceived nobody. Yet, even prior to the majestic stone fortresses, Newport's atmosphere underwent a shift. Its serene streets buzzed with horse-drawn vehicles each summer. Establishments such as the Ocean House hosted lavish dances, and the Cliff Walk invited strollers to parade seaside in their elegant attire. Customs of high society took shape: teas, luncheons, and philanthropic gatherings that structured opportunities for the elite to mingle, rival, and exhibit. For the native residents, this surge of capital brought advantages alongside upheaval. Anglers now dwelled under the looming presence of monumental builds, ornaments drawn from French chateaux and Italian palazzos. The pace of the season transformed the serene settlement into a bustling hub for individuals whose riches stemmed from railways and finance rather than vessels. To grasp the disparity, envision Newport as a theatrical backdrop. In one area stood time-worn timber dwellings where Rhode Island families had dwelt modestly along the shore for generations. In contrast, opulent stone edifices emerged, adorned with brought-in European masterpieces, constructed for clans that typically resided there just 6 weeks annually. The clash felt nearly dreamlike, akin to observing two eras of the past unfolding in tandem. Newport's emergence as a seasonal hub for the elite wasn't by chance. It was driven, too, by the concerns of the nation's affluent. The Civil War had disrupted established orders. Waves of newcomers were altering urban landscapes, while factory growth generated both wealth and turmoil. For the upper class, Newport provided refuge, a haven amid orchestrated elegance. The sea, crisp breezes, and tight-knit circle of prosperity offered reassurance. Amid the trimmed landscapes of their properties, they could imagine the country's troubles as distant echoes. By the era when the initial surge of Gilded Age estates appeared in the 1870s and 1880s, Newport had solidified its role as the nation's premier summer retreat. It transcended its origins as a seaside village. It became a venue for aspiration. Pathways once alive with anglers and mariners now resounded with elegant musical ensembles. The bluffs, previously scattered with beacons and simple huts, now featured hauled-in stone and Parisian-style panes. Still, the town's core essence persisted in the briny atmosphere and active port, subtly signaling to observant eyes that this shift was more spectacle than lasting reality. Prior to the Gilded Age, Newport existed in flux, part rustic hamlet, part prepared platform, bracing for influxes of opulence so immense they demanded full-scale residences to house them. And upon that wealth's arrival, the locale was poised to proclaim itself America's seasonal throne of affluence. The Carey Mansion, Newport's spectral fortress. If Newport represents the nation's display of limestone grandees and golden fantasies, then Seaview Terrace, widely recognized as the Carey Mansion, stands distinct, like a Gothic murmur amid the prevailing neoclassical splendor. Whereas spots like the Breakers or Marble House basked in the glow of high society gatherings, Seaview Terrace evokes twilight recollections. Its rugged exterior, arched gateways, and resonant corridors suggest not a mere vacation abode, but rather an excerpt from a continental tale of the uncanny. For numerous observers, it always emphasized aura over opulence, a dwelling that appears to harbor mysteries within its framework. Seaview Terrace stands out not just for its look, but for its peculiar tale of displacement. First constructed in Washington, D.C. during the dawn of the 1900s by liquor baron Edson Bradley, the residence blended Gothic revival motifs, French manor influences, and medieval touches into a composite marvel. It featured cloisters, spires, colored panes, and even incorporated fragments from reclaimed European basilicas. Bradley had invested lavishly to craft an abode that functioned more as a shrine to extravagance than a mere dwelling. Following his passing, however, his spouse transported the whole edifice to Newport from 1923 to 1925. Element by element, block upon block, Seaview Terrace was taken apart in the capital and reassembled with a vista toward the ocean. The relocation was an epic endeavor, as though Bradley's widow had grafted a complete realm onto New England turf. Approaching Seaview Terrace during the 1930s would have proven a mesmerizing encounter. Its expansive chambers, arched heights, and sculpted hearth surrounds evoked entry into a Gallic cloister. The property encompassed over 40 spaces, among them a two-level Gothic sanctuary that might have fit an ancient priory. In contrast to the luminous open foyers of Marble House or Rosecliff, Seaview Terrace appeared to absorb illumination, fostering a subdued, enigmatic vibe. Guests called it striking yet disconcerting, a site where magnificence and melancholy intertwined evenly. By mid-century, the estate started to deteriorate. Unlike the Vanderbilts or Astors, the Bradleys lacked the enduring resources to sustain such a vast holding forever. After passing through multiple owners, it ultimately linked to an entirely novel notoriety. During the 1960s, Seaview Terrace gained eternal recognition on screen as the imagined Collinwood estate in the eerie serial Dark Shadows. For countless viewers nationwide, the program's introductory scenes, surf pounding the rocks and lenses gliding over Seaview Terrace, fixed the structure as a spectral emblem. Overnight, a once private sanctuary for a single lineage morphed into one of the most iconic ghostly abodes in the collective American psyche. This tie to Dark Shadows redefined the Ho. The enigmatic allure of Seaview Terrace defies easy categorization. In contrast to Marble House, indelibly tied to suffragist Alva Vanderbilt or the Breakers, emblematic of Vanderbilt opulence, Seaview Terrace evolved into a realm of specters, undead creatures, and shadowy Gothic tales. Visitors flocked to Newport not merely to admire the lavishness of the Gilded Age, but to spy the eerie fortress flickering across their TV screens. It transcended mere construction. It embodied legend, a site primed for tales of spectral presences, murmurs of secret corridors, and an aura suggesting vitality beyond mere chronicles. In reality, Seaview Terrace pulsed with hardship as well. Upholding a vast estate like this presented overwhelming challenges, and unlike certain other Newport properties, it wasn't swiftly converted into a preserved exhibit. During the second half of the 20th century, the grand residence deteriorated, its masonry eroding, its inner spaces eroded by the passage of years and abandonment. For a time, it served as instructional spaces for Salve Regina University. Learners occupied areas that formerly functioned as Gothic sanctuaries and vast banquet rooms. Picture the bizarre sensation of attending a class on books in a chamber far more fitting for cloistered friars or apparitions than for undergraduates. Nowadays, Seaview Terrace retains its veil of intrigue. Whereas other Newport estates shine with revived crystal fixtures and trimmed gardens, Seaview Terrace appears somewhat overlooked, its splendor mellowed by climbing vines and ocean breezes. Onlookers portray it as captivating yet disconcerting, a testament that not every grand home arose solely for lavish seasonal gatherings. Certain ones, such as Seaview Terrace, emerged as declarations of personal flair, quirky, medieval-inspired, perhaps even somber. Encountering it today reveals the twofold essence of Newport's era of palatial homes. One aspect gleams with the radiant splendor of the Vanderbilts and Astors. The contrasting side looms as the ominous outline of a bastion that pulses with near sentience. The Carey Mansion underscores that the Gilded Age wasn't solely a procession of lavish Versailles imitations. It encompassed periods of innovation, personal ambition, and at times, peculiar unfulfilled aspirations that proved impossible to maintain. In Newport, that ambition endures, brick upon brick, as one of the most evocative and eerie survivors from America's epic of lavishness. The Bells Mansion, flames on the cliffside. Along a serene segment of Newport's jagged shoreline, where the Atlantic crashes relentlessly onto the crags, the skeletal frame of one of the town's most intriguing estates persists. Dubbed the Bells, or occasionally the Reef Estate, it narrates a saga blending magnificence, misfortune, and odd revival. Distinct from the polished Vanderbilt chateaus gracing visitor guides, the Bells has surrendered to nature's whims, a spectral remnant of the Gilded Age whose decaying barriers murmur of bygone luxury and abrupt downfall. The Bells originated with Theodore M. Davis, a prosperous attorney and copper tycoon who, akin to many peers, aimed to transform Newport into a seasonal retreat. Davis stood apart from typical tycoons. He doubled as an avid amateur scholar of ancient Egypt, funding digs in the Valley of the Kings and asserting discovery of Queen Hatshepsut's burial site. This worldly flair and theatricality infused his Newport abode. Constructed toward the close of the 19th century, the property initially bore the name The Reef. It stood as a refined but formidable residence gazing seaward, encircled by verdant landscapes and outbuildings sheltering Davis's favored steeds. Yet the Bells transcended the typical opulent cottage in Newport's rivalry of indulgence. Its architecture conveyed a bastion's robustness, featuring robust barriers and a robust, nearly feudal profile. While Marble House captivated with opulent Versailles-like details, the Bells projected durability and endurance. Its title itself, summoning the resonance of pealing chimes, lent an air of solemnity, as though designed to endure not just as a symbol of Davis's fortune, but through the epochs. Within, the Bells mirrored Davis's diverse inclinations. Guests recounted spacious chambers adorned with pieces gathered from his journeys, especially from Egypt, where he devoted years to backing archaeological ventures and gathering relics. His Newport domain functioned less as a dazzling social hub and more as a private gallery, where scholarly zeal intersected with affluent surroundings. Amid a time when the elite vied to eclipse one another through extravagance, Davis distinguished himself as the cosmopolitan connoisseur. Nevertheless, like numerous Newport residences, the Bells couldn't evade fortune's shifts. Following Davis's passing in 1915, the site languished unused. It passed through various owners, and amid World War II, the U.S. Navy seized it for military purposes. The edifice, previously brimming with Egyptian treasures and refined decor, was repurposed for strategic needs. Its resonant corridors accommodated administrative spaces and gear. Its grounds were crushed under the tread of naval personnel and troops. The conflict, which ravaged so much of Europe's built legacy, imprinted its wounds on Newport as well. The most crushing setback arrived in the aftermath of the war, when a fierce blaze gutted the estate. Fire ripped apart the building, scorching the walls and charring the timbers. Once the haze lifted, the Bells lay in shambles. In contrast to the Breakers or Marble House, which survived and were eventually refurbished, the Bells failed to rebound. Its skeletal remains endured, battered by salty gusts and overrun by climbing vines, serving as a stark symbol of how opulence can crumble into debris in an instant. Still, the tale didn't fade into quiet oblivion. Over the ensuing years, the Bells transformed into something more enigmatic. It turned into a backdrop for urban graffiti and a haunt for ruin enthusiasts. Area creators adorned its enduring surfaces with vibrant wall art, injecting vivid hues onto its ashen rock framework. Young locals challenged one another to slip in under cover of darkness, swapping tales of Davis's ghost or murmuring about ancient Egyptian hexes that trailed him back from the Valley of the Kings. What was once a showcase for extravagant Gilded Age excess now functioned as a hub for rebellious spirits, a spot where Newport's younger crowd etched their presence with aerosol cans rather than sculpted stone. There's an oddly eerie allure to strolling by the Bells these days. Unlike the pristine estates of Newport that gloss over the Vanderbilts' lives beneath sparkling fixtures, the Bells provides no structured visits. It endures in decay, vulnerable to breezes, ocean spray, and flights of fancy. Its burned-out barriers evoke a peculiar charm, akin to the vestiges of a European Gothic abbey. And amid its deterioration, it narrates an alternate Newport chronicle, one centered not on perpetual riches safeguarded, but on the fleeting nature of prosperity. How even the most majestic residences can vanish into the maw of time and mishap. The Bells stands in vivid opposition to its surroundings. Nearby along the shoreline, the Breakers towers in majestic symmetry, its stonework renewed and grounds trimmed as if the opulent era lingered on. The Bells, by contrast, sags in hushed desolation. Its heritage endures not through formal conservation groups, but via the street painters who view its wreckage as a vast outdoor exhibit. Through this lens, it highlights both the vulnerability and endurance of Newport's built heritage. Not all grand homes persist whole, yet everyone imprints the terrain in the minds of those who cross its path. Envision pausing in front of it during a misty dusk, The Atlantic roils offshore past the bluffs, seabirds circle above while the relic juts like a shattered fang against the horizon. You might nearly catch the faint sound of steeds in the barns, the low hum of visitors in its vast chambers, the tinkle of toasts lifted by Davis in person. And amid the hush, the fresh coats of paint and frescoes from contemporary fingers emerge, evidence that even amid wreckage, the bells keep sparking invention, intrigue, and legend. The reef property, the Bells, no matter its label, may well be Newport's oddest residence, valued not for its treasures, but for its piecemeal persistence. It lingers as a seaside emblem that every phase of splendor harbors the germs of downfall, and that occasionally the debris weaves narratives as compelling as those of the estates that remain upright. Belcourt Castle, steeds, Gothic splendor, and quirky habitation. If Newport's villas served as theaters where the Gilded Age upper crust enacted their dreams, Belcourt Castle might have scripted the quirkiest plotline. Whereas the Vanderbilts erected lavish dance floors to court elite favor and the Astors packed their spaces with customs of class distinction, Belcourt pursued a more intimate blueprint, prioritizing the proprietor's caprices over widespread admiration. From its inception, this home was crafted to challenge norms. Belcourt came to life in 1891 at the behest of Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont, whose surname alone evoked noble heritage. Heir to the affluent Belmont lineage, built on fortunes from banking and investments, Oliver grew up amid luxury yet nurtured his own fervor, especially for equestrian pursuits. Thus, when he engaged the renowned designer Richard Morris Hunt, who also shaped the breakers, Belmont sought no mimicry of Versailles to captivate diners. Instead, he envisioned a dwelling orbiting his deepest affection, his horse quarters. The outcome diverged wildly from Newport's norms. Other estates spotlighted imposing gateways and reception areas, but Belcourt's ground level revolved around enclosures for Belmont's elite racehorses. Picture entering a Newport villa not to behold crystal pendants and grand sweeps of stone, but gleaming compartments and the aroma of fresh fodder blending with ornate French Gothic vaults. Belmont's equines dwelled in finer elegance than countless folks of the time, encircled by leaded panes, exquisite carpentry, and engravings that lent their quarters a sanctuary-like aura. Partygoers were frequently ushered initially to view the mounts, treating them as the household's genuine sovereigns. The architecture blended styles, a fusion of French Renaissance, Gothic resurgence, and Hunt's penchant for bold ornamentation. Viewed externally, Belcourt resembled a fortified chateau from the Middle Ages, transplanted onto Rhode Island's rugged cliffs. Belcourt Castle features imposing towers and intricate stone details. The interior dives deep into Gothic vibes, boasting vaulted ceilings, rich mahogany paneling, colorful stained glass windows, and an ambiance that evokes a grand European fortress rather than a typical U.S. seaside retreat. While places like the Breakers radiate brightness and expansiveness, Belcourt envelops its guests in mystery and drama. Oliver Belmont was famous for his extravagant personality. He hosted opulent gatherings at Belcourt, turning the home's quirky design into a topic of intrigue. Attendees might enjoy sparkling champagne amid displays of suits of armor and ancient wall hangings, then get a tour of the stables where horses were showcased like stars of the show. It was quirky, even amid the extravagance of the Gilded Age. Yet that eccentricity was exactly the appeal. During a time when tycoons vied to impress with grand marble halls and glittering fixtures, Belmont carved out a vision that was distinctly personal. Following Oliver Belmont's passing in 1908, Belcourt embarked on a fresh phase that amplified its offbeat charm. The estate changed owners several times and, by the mid-20th century, shifted from a secluded residence to a gallery of curiosities. The Tenney family purchased it in 1956 and welcomed visitors not just to admire a preserved Gilded Age treasure, but to explore an array of unconventional items. Tourists discovered collections of European suits of armor alongside oddities that might fit better in a wonder cabinet than a heritage site. Belcourt earned fame for its bizarre exhibits and alleged ghostly presences. People murmured about apparitions haunting its dim corridors, with reports of eerie glows and sudden chills in chambers packed with old-world artifacts. Ghost hunters stopped by, stoking myths that portrayed Belcourt as a venue for both past events and otherworldly drama. In a town brimming with daylight showstoppers, Belcourt's draw grew stronger after dark. It didn't slot neatly into one mold like some of Newport's other estates. No pure venue for high society dances, no dedicated exhibit space, no mere dwelling. It blended all those roles, or none, based on the period. This shifting essence set it apart in a landscape where grand homes often bore the burden of lineage and strict customs. Belcourt welcomed the weird, fostered oddity, and thrived on the edges of Newport's polished social scene. Approaching Belcourt nowadays highlights that contrast. Its medieval-inspired facade seems more at home in the Loire Valley than Rhode Island. The tales it holds of Belmont's equine-centric garages, guided walks through armored chambers, spectral murmurs, and Gothic splendor position it as a vibrant myth rather than a static relic. If Marble House embodies dominance and the Breakers excess, Belcourt hints at fixations, individual whims, and the surprising paths money can forge in design. Picture yourself as a visitor during Belmont's era. You expect a lavish dance floor, but discover horses pampered like royalty in gleaming stalls. Afterward, you sip under sparkling lights as ancient armor catches the dim glow. The evening unfolds like a surreal vision, part old-world reverie, part new-world drive. As you depart, ocean gusts whip around the fortress-like form, blurring the line between past and fable. Belcourt Castle endures as one of Newport's quirkiest estates, defying conventions on purpose. It's neither fully forgotten nor simply revived. It's cherished for its Gothic splendor, unconventional lifestyle, and intriguing echoes. Among Newport's lineup of opulent homes, it emerges as the outlier, and maybe the most captivating for that reason. Wildacre by the sea with the Steads. Music. While many Newport mansions aim to dazzle with vast marble expanses, lavish lighting, and floods of continental influences, Wildacre takes a subtler path. Nestled serenely along the shore, it's neither the biggest nor the flashiest of the area's properties, yet it claims a special place. It embodies a seamless blend of building, terrain, and generational heritage. Wildacre speaks softly rather than roaring, revealing deep insights into how affluence could manifest beyond bold displays. Constructed in 1885, Wildacre was created for businessman George R. Fearing by the esteemed firm Peabody & Stearns, key players in Gilded Age design. Yet the real enchantment of Wildacre stems not just from its shingle-style build, a distinctly U.S. approach favoring wooden siding, uneven lines, and a touch of natural sophistication, but from its grounds shaped by Frederick Law Olmsted, the pioneer of American landscape design. Frederick Law Olmsted, renowned for crafting New York's Central Park, aimed to integrate Wildacre seamlessly with its surroundings instead of overpowering them. This approach stood out in Newport, where numerous opulent residences appeared, intent on overshadowing their landscapes. The Breakers, Marble House, and Rosecliff all emerge as grand displays soaring over their estates, resembling European palaces transplanted wholesale. Wildacre, however, nestles softly upon the terrain. Its cedar shingles aged by the briny breeze, its terrain undulating smoothly down to the shore. Olmsted sculpted the grounds to amplify a sense of isolation, incorporating meandering trails and foliage that bordered the water like an animated artwork. Strolling its property evoked not a dramatic entrance, but a meander into an exclusive haven. The residence itself embodies the shingle style's focus on merging interior and exterior spaces. Interiors spill onto porches, panes capture seascapes, and the construction materials seem innate rather than artificial. Thus, Wildacre embodies an alternative vision of the Gilded Age ideal, not a fortress of extravagance, but a coastal haven where environment and design harmonized effortlessly. It offered a venue for lazy afternoons spent lounging on verandas with a book or intimate soirees, rather than opulent galas for vast crowds. Yet, like every Newport estate, Wildacre's narrative extends beyond aesthetics to encompass lineage. The property linked up with the Ulrich clan, among the area's most prominent families, celebrated for their ties to Rosecliff and prominence in elite circles. Via unions and bequests, Wildacre wove into the intricate tapestry of Newport's hereditary networks, its understated grace offsetting the ostentation of nearby properties. This dwelling could host affluence discreetly, without craving ostentation, serving as a backdrop for familial bonds amid the ocean's constant pulse. Safeguarding it proved no simple task, though. In contrast to Marble House or the Breakers, which swiftly ascended as emblems of lavishness deserving protection, Wildacre's restraint left it exposed. As the 20th century wore on, with Newport's fortunes waning and countless villas deteriorating, Wildacre teetered on oblivion. Advocates for conservation highlighted its structural and horticultural value, especially the Olmsted Association, positioning it as a gem comparable to its more ostentatious counterparts. Disputes regarding its maintenance and eventual custodianship illuminated a key reality of Newport. Not every grand home endured due to scale or renown. Some persisted through dedicated struggles. Visiting Wildacre now, visitors detect its attunement to a subtler cadence of the Gilded Age. Picture traversing the estate in the waning years of the 19th century, the tangy gusts rustling the meadows, the surf pounding the cliffs, and the manor ascending not as a bastion but as a harmonious element of the vista. Visitors might amble along Olmsted's routes, lingering at a seat crafted to spotlight the skyline. Within, the timber-lined chambers would radiate coziness against the sea's bite, providing solace over showmanship. Through this lens, Wildacre threads an unconventional strand into Newport's chronicle. The era transcended mere flaunting of riches. It involved channeling fortune via moderation, alignment with the wild, and the conviction that opulence could encompass serenity alongside splendor. To those accustomed to the Breakers' imposing stature or Marble House's Versailles-like refinement, Wildacre's modesty might have seemed boldly innovative. That very restraint, in fact, confers its importance. Amid a locale where countless estates verge on parodying indulgence, Wildacre demonstrates that the Gilded Age brimmed with diversity. It encompassed not solely sparkle and stone, but ventures in dwelling, molding environments, and equilibrating aspiration with scenic splendor. Olmsted's influence, evident in each contour of the terrain, underscores that the period occasionally channeled riches to honor the lyricism of locale rather than subjugating it with masonry. Encountering Wildacre affords a peek at an imagined Newport, less fixated on display, more on nuance, where villas functioned as refuges, not podiums. In achieving that uncommon equilibrium, Wildacre has inscribed its mark on the locale's heritage as one of its most subtly influential domains. Beechwood, the Astor's venue for societal drama. If Newport boasted a grand hall during the Gilded Age, it lay not amid the marble confines of the Vanderbilt's Breakers or the ornate passages of Marble House. Rather, it resided inside the Italianate villa called Beechwood, where Caroline Webster Schermerhorn Astor, the Mrs. Astor, held sway as the unchallenged sovereign of New York and Newport's upper echelons. Though other estates impressed through design, Beechwood's influence stemmed from an intangible yet profoundly commanding force, the arena for enacting, bargaining, and upholding social strata. Constructed initially in 1851 for Daniel Parish, a prosperous new initially designed in the style of a New Yorker villa, the Beechwood estate underwent significant renovation and enlargement in 1881 under the guidance of renowned architect Richard Morris Hunt, tailored precisely to fulfill the wishes of Mrs. Astor. Hunt, famed later for crafting Marble House and the Breakers, fashioned a residence that artfully blended sophistication with practical hosting capabilities. Unlike the sprawling Vanderbilt properties, Beechwood stayed comparatively restrained in scale, prioritizing authority and intent over sheer magnitude. Its reception halls, meal areas, and outdoor terraces were thoughtfully laid out around a singular goal, serving as the backdrop for the nation's most prestigious gatherings. Through her command of what evolved into the famous 400, an allusion to the select circle of about 400 people worthy of her invitations, Caroline Astor dominated the social scene. Securing an invitation to Beechwood meant earning an indelible mark of prestige, weaving one's identity into the tapestry of upper-class distinction. Although its dance chamber was more compact than the vast halls of the Breakers, Beechwood's ballroom stood as the ultimate arena for evaluating social standing. Within those walls, under Mrs. Astor's discerning eye, a person's heritage, fortune, and decorum faced rigorous scrutiny. Observers of the era remarked that she favored upholding the customs of established wealth over the ostentatious displays of freshly minted riches. Envision a balmy summer night in the 1880s. Lanterns flickered softly, horse-drawn vehicles arrived at the grand portal of Beechwood, and attendees adorned in jewels and fine fabrics glided toward the dance floor. As the musicians played their lively tunes, all eyes inevitably turned to Mrs. Astor, enthroned like royalty. She embodied a quiet assertion that true influence in America stemmed not solely from vast fortunes, but from controlling access to elite circles. Discussions there carried weight, serving as calculated displays rather than casual banter. Every phrase was chosen with care for decorum. Waltzing in Beechwood transcended simple movement. It was an audition on a platform where fortunes and reputation could rise or crumble. Thus, the estate functioned more as a grand stage than a mere dwelling. Its rooms absorbed the ceremonies of the nation's uppermost echelons, the meticulously planned banquets, the unveilings of young debutantes, the understated rivalries pitting inherited fortunes against emerging industrial empires. While the Vanderbilts erected monumental chateaux of stone, they frequently fell short of validation in Mrs. Astor's view. Only following Alva Vanderbilt's legendary affair at Marble House, which pried open the doors of refined society, did Beechwood's aura of selectivity start to erode. Yet, it endured as the symbol of entrenched customs, the site where the Astors' sway shone brightest. Inevitably, however, eras shifted. Entering the 20th century's dawn, the Astors' dominance faded, supplanted by fresh industrial magnates like the Vanderbilts, Goulds, and eventually the Morgans, who reshaped the nation's nobility via their immense riches. Beechwood, nonetheless, clung to its mystique. As Newport transitioned toward conservation and visitor appeal, the estate's past as a venue for societal pageantry set it distinctly apart. Its significance lay not in dimensions, but in symbolism, the formalization of etiquette during America's formative cultural years. The structure itself, with its Italianate flair and poised dimensions, embodies this heritage enduringly. The plastered exterior, the curved openings, the covered promenades, they avoid excess yet convey polished grace. The dance hall, no grandest in Newport, yet resonates with faint strains of music and hushed exchanges. Strolling through Beechwood evokes more than architecture. It stirs the unseen ranks that once animated it. Toward the close of the 20th century, Beechwood embarked on a fresh chapter in its storied saga upon acquisition by Larry Ellison, co-founder of Oracle and among the globe's wealthiest figures. Drawn to Newport's opulent residences, Ellison aimed to rehabilitate Beechwood not just as a private retreat, but as a tribute to the Gilded Age era. His plans were bold, intending to rekindle its status as a hub for refined and communal activities adapted to contemporary tastes. Ellison's stewardship brought an intriguing parallel, yet another tycoon leveraging the property as a platform for prominence. This evolution highlights Beechwood's remarkable continuity. Distinct from the breakers locked in Vanderbilt splendor, or Marble House, safeguarded as Alva's opulent tribute to Versailles, Beechwood's core revolves around human connections rather than lavish materials. It has always been, and continues, as a space shaped by assemblies and the dramas of inclusion or rejection enacted inside. Today, lingering in the ballroom conjures visions of chandeliers sparkling much as in Mrs. Astor's day. The quietude hangs thick, poised as if anticipating the return of melodies and swirling attire. Those surfaces still hold echoes of dialogues that balanced or shattered standings. Though less renowned than the breakers, Beechwood offers deeper insights. It illustrates that the Gilded Age involved not only fortunes showcased in architecture, but also the intricate ceremonies unfolding within. Beechwood stands as an emblem of subtle yet firm influence in the heart of a sprawling estate. In Newport, amid rivaling estates vying for splendor, Beechwood's real strength emerges from the unseen dominance that once coursed through its corridors. Marble House, Alva Vanderbilt's citadel of feminist influence. Music. Of all the lavish summer homes in Newport, none embodies the paradoxes of the Gilded Age quite like Marble House. On the surface, it appears as the pinnacle of extravagance, a slice of Versailles relocated to Rhode Island's shoreline, gleaming with more than 500,000 cubic feet of marble sourced globally. However, hidden under that dazzling exterior unfolds a richer narrative involving drive, defiance, and outright advocacy. To its owner, Alva Vanderbilt, Marble House transcended mere luxury. It served as a platform where she reshaped her authority and, quite surprisingly, amplified her support for a pivotal social campaign of the era. Finished in 1892 and crafted by architect Richard Morris Hunt, Marble House was presented to Alva by her spouse, William K. Vanderbilt, on her 39th birthday. The expense was immense, around $1 million back then, equivalent to over $350 million in modern terms. Despite the Vanderbilts' vast fortune, they were viewed as newcomers in wealth circles, trailing behind the Astors and other long-standing elites. For Alva, this residence went beyond shelter. It functioned as a tool in the class struggles of Newport and New York, featuring opulent drawing rooms, gardens drawing from French designs, and a dance hall adorned in gold. Marble House aimed to proclaim the Vanderbilts' rightful place among society's elite. Its very structure proclaimed this intent. Hunt drew inspiration from Versailles' Petit Trianon, yet amplified it to vast, majestic proportions. The outside shone in pristine marble, while inside, visitors encountered ornate gold trims, painted vaults, and sculpted mantels. Stepping into Marble House felt like a journey to 18th century France, with lavishness that even the Astors couldn't easily dismiss. This became Alva's own Versailles, her seat of command to draw eyes, and draw them she certainly did. Alva refused the subdued part typically assigned to elite women. She burned with resolve, intent on securing a spot for her family and herself in America's high society. Marble House symbolized her might. Within its walls, she organized grand galas and suppers that matched Caroline Astor's in scale, inviting Newport's inner circle and compelling the traditionalists to recognize her presence. Visitors arrived via horse-drawn vehicles, climbing the marble stairs into realms of sparkling lights and melodies, every element arranged to affirm the Vanderbilt standing. Yet Alva's journey extended past triumphs in high society. After her divorce from William, a daring and shocking step in that period, she channeled her influence toward broader pursuits beyond self-interest. By the dawn of the 20th century, Alva emerged as a key ally in the women's suffrage drive, and Marble House, previously a battleground for social skirmishes, evolved into one for civic battles. She arranged suffrage gatherings on the grounds, turning an icon of Gilded Age indulgence into a bastion for women's rights. Picture it. A grand home, once alive with dances and whispers, now resounding with demands for voting rights. Those same marble stairs, which once greeted nobility and social luminaries, now greeted female reformers, flags waving, addresses given amid lavish surroundings. Alva fully grasped the twist. She had wielded Marble House to claim her status in a strict social order, and now she deployed it against a more profound barrier: the denial of women's role in governance. Her commitment ran deep. Alva took the helm as the inaugural leader of the National Woman's Party and funded initiatives that paved the way for the 19th Amendment's ratification in 1920. Though detractors pointed out that her riches shielded her from the struggles common to most suffragettes, her prominence and funding propelled the cause ahead. Marble House ceased being solely a testament to Vanderbilt drive. It became an instrument in the quest for fairness. What captivates about Marble House is its double essence. In one light, it represents the height of Gilded Age indulgence, with marble passages and golden vaults evoking an era where riches were displayed like regal insignia. In another, it highlights how, even in such sumptuous settings, people could exert influence in unforeseen manners. Alva Vanderbilt, frequently labeled as merely driven or overbearing, leveraged her estate not just to boost her lineage, but to champion a defining struggle of her age. Touring Marble House now reveals these dimensions. The dining chamber, boasting vaulted heights and shimmering fixtures, continues to emanate lavishness to find the space. The Gothic chamber, brimming with Alva's assortment of medieval artifacts, hinted at her diverse flair. Yet the essence of Marble House extended beyond its lavish decor. It resided in the recollections of the women who convened there to advocate for transformation. Envision the scene. Flags cascading over the balustrades, cries echoing amid the gusts from the Atlantic, with Alva, formerly the pinnacle of high society, leading the charge in a crusade for political upheaval. Marble House transcended mere stonework. It embodied drive etched into rock, evolving into a platform for advancement. Amid Newport's array of estates that mostly celebrate riches, Marble House holds a richer heritage. It serves as a Versailles along Rhode Island's shoreline and a pivotal site in the narrative of American women's rights, a venue where opulence and influence merged in enduring reverberations. The Breakers. Vanderbilt splendor facing the ocean. When it comes to embodying Newport in the collective American mind, no residence outshines the Breakers, towering over the Atlantic like a Renaissance bastion adorned with Yankee Drive. It stands as not merely the grandest of Newport's seasonal retreats, but its most emblematic. For countless people, the Breakers encapsulates the Gilded Age in essence, boundless riches, unchecked extravagance, and a dwelling so immense it felt more like a tribute to one dynasty's dominance, that of the Vanderbilts, than a mere abode. The tale of the Breakers starts with Cornelius Vanderbilt II, the grandson of Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, the magnate of shipping and rails who established the family's vast wealth. By the closing years of the 19th century, the Vanderbilts reigned as America's richest dynasty. Their rail networks bound the country's trade like iron conduits. Yet such immense prosperity required emblems. In Newport, where opulence vied through stone, marble, and gold leaf, Cornelius II crafted his crowning achievement. The initial dwelling on the property, a timber-built edifice, fell to flames in 1892. For Cornelius II, this setback became a chance, and he promptly engaged Richard Morris Hunt, the era's foremost American designer, to fashion a creation surpassing all competitors. Hunt drew from the Renaissance villas of Genoa and Turin, fusing European majesty with American proportions. The result? A 70-room estate spanning 62,000 square feet, costing $7 million back then, equivalent to more than $200 million now. The Breakers wasn't merely expansive, it was daunting. Its limestone exterior climbed 3 levels above the waves, while inside, marble, intricate tiles, and golden accents gleamed. The grand entrance hall stretched almost 50 feet upward, its arched roof adorned with symbolic murals that evoked a continental basilica over a family retreat. The dining area sparkled under baccarat crystal fixtures as the music salon shone with gilded surfaces and ornate molding. Throughout, the structure proclaimed more than affluence. It declared imperial authority immortalized in masonry. Still, the Breakers was meticulously planned as a theater for elite gatherings. Its spaces optimized for display, from expansive lounges accommodating throngs of visitors to verandas with views of the pounding sea. Picture entering the dance hall during a balmy evening, an ensemble's melodies building, ladies in jewel-encrusted attire, gentlemen in formal wear debating rails, governance, and estates. The atmosphere hung heavy, laced not just with sense, but with aspirations. Every attendee quietly gauged their status within the Vanderbilt sphere. However, under the sheen lurked the era's paradoxes. The very Vanderbilt assets that erected the Breakers also sparked widespread disdain for trusts and amassed fortunes. To everyday citizens, the estate inspired wonder, yet provoked ire, a regal perch on the bluffs while multitudes barely sustained their households. The Breakers emerged as the starkest emblem of the Gilded Age's glories and injustices alike. Following Cornelius Vanderbilt II's passing in 1899, the property stayed with the family, though it never recaptured its early vibrancy. His spouse, Alice Gwynne Vanderbilt, oversaw it for years, upholding Newport's social customs amid evolving times. Come mid-20th century, though, the once endless Vanderbilt resources had diminished. Numerous of their stately New York properties were razed, and even the Breakers teetered on an unsure fate. The Preservation Society of Newport County stepped in to secure its future. In 1948, Alice Vanderbilt's daughter granted a lease to the group, transforming it into a public exhibit. Now, sightseers who formerly could only dream of Vanderbilt grandeur tread its ornate corridors, marveling at hearths vast enough for a person to enter and vaults depicting deities and inspirations. The breakers evolved into not only uphold this grand estate stands as a tribute not just to a single dynasty, but to a whole epoch, safeguarded now as a national emblem of extravagance and drive. In modern times, the breakers draws in hundreds of thousands of sightseers annually, establishing it as the top historic residence in the United States. Its function has evolved from an exclusive stage for the upper crust to a communal showcase of Gilded Age splendor. Even amid its upkeep, the property retains the mystique of bygone days. From the balcony, with the ocean pounding the cliffs beneath, it's easy to picture Cornelius II overseeing his domain, the steel tracks spanning the land, riches pouring into his vaults, and his seaside fortress declaring that the Vanderbilts had mastered both business and high society. Often hailed as Newport's premier gem, the Breakers surpasses that label. It represents a riddle etched in stone, a masterpiece of craftsmanship that also signifies disparity, stunning in its elegance, yet glaring in its opulence. Entering the halls evokes wonder at the stonework and gold accents, while also conveying the burden of the past. A stark nudge that each fixture and artwork stemmed from rail lines, workers, labor disputes, and empires raised on the toil of innumerable souls. Over 100 years since its erection, the Breakers continues to dominate Newport like a bastion of aspiration. In every way, it encapsulates the Gilded Age mansion, bold, defiant, and indelible. Rosecliff, the venue for celebrations and cinematic fantasies. If the Breakers served as Newport's temple of influence and Marble House its palace of aspiration, then Rosecliff functioned as its grand hall of enchantment. Constructed to captivate rather than dominate, Rosecliff captures the allure and drama of Newport's social scene in its most performative moments. From lavish soirees to production teams filming jazz-age allure, the residence weaves a narrative focused less on legacies and more on pleasure, on how design, fortune, and creativity merged to form a setting where fact mingled with spectacle. Rosecliff came to life in 1899 under the commission of Teresa Tessie Fair Ulrichs, offspring of Nevada's Comstock lode silver magnate James Graham Fair. Tessie rode the tide of frontier wealth surging toward the East Coast in the waning years of the 1800s, infusing the untamed vigor of mining riches into the polished enclave of Newport's seasonal retreat, home to the Vanderbilts and Astors with their rail-based roots and established connections. Tessie personified the boldness of fresh capital, insistent on demonstrating that silver from Nevada could rival any Vanderbilt transport fortune in luster. For this vision, she enlisted celebrated designer Stanford White of McKim, Mead & White, who fashioned a home inspired by Versailles' Grand Trianon. Yet Rosecliff felt more buoyant, ethereal, and tailored for one goal: amusement. Finished in 1902, the structure was notably compact, only 30 chambers versus the 60 or 70 in places like the Breakers or Marble House. Still, its dimensions misled. Rosecliff achieved a realm of harmony where elegant forms and details fostered an air of poise. The radiant white exterior, expansive grounds, and radiant dance hall appeared crafted to allure rather than subdue. At the heart lay the ballroom, among Newport's grandest, able to accommodate 1,000 revelers. Envision a balmy night, crystal lights aglow, strings rendering dances, bubbly cascading, and attire sparkling as couples glided over the waxed wood. The space flowed straight to patios and landscapes, letting festivities extend under the stars, with chuckles blending into the surf's roar on the bluffs. Tessie Ulrichs mastered this platform. She emerged as a premier entertainer in Newport. Her gatherings pulled in not just U.S. notables, but continental nobility, creators, and leaders. Attendees recounted evenings that felt like legends rather than actual events, the estate itself emerging as a player in the tale of affluence and fancy. Rosecliff aimed not to eclipse the Breakers in scale, but to surpass it in merriment. Still, like all visions from the Gilded Age, a hint of transience lingered. Tessie passed away quite early in 1926, and Rosecliff changed owners, its halls resounding with recollections over rhythms. By mid-century, Newport's prosperity had waned, leaving many estates on the brink of decay or renewal. Rosecliff, though, gained fresh vitality, not solely via conservation but via motion pictures. Tinseltown embraced it, turning the site into a celebrated backdrop in Newport. Its dance chamber and grounds featured in films including The Great Gatsby, 1974, with Robert Redford and Mia Farrow, True Lies, 1994, and 27 Dresses, 2008. Every picture highlighted a unique facet of Rosecliff's essence: its jazz-age shine, dramatic venues, its knack for morphing into any fantasy the lens demanded. Viewing those movies is like witnessing Rosecliff starring in its own right, a standout performer amid the cast, demonstrating how buildings can capture imagination with the same intensity as any novel. Yet, beyond the silver screen, the mansion served as a canvas for Newport's shifting persona. During the second half of the 1900s, Rosecliff emerged as a prized asset of the Preservation Society of Newport County, welcoming the public as a historic site. Guests strolled its pristine corridors and opulent dance hall, picturing themselves as revelers at Tessie's soirees or background figures in a cinematic production. Safeguarding Rosecliff kept its legacy vibrant, not merely as a Gilded Age artifact, but as an ongoing vision that continues to evoke wonder. From the terrace of Rose Cliff nowadays, the vast Atlantic unfolds past the neatly trimmed grounds, the skyline shimmering under the identical glow that once lit up elegant attire and fizzing flutes. The structure exudes an eternal yet dramatic vibe, underscoring that the Gilded Age revolved around more than mere influence and riches. It was about grandeur, illusion, and crafting realms beyond the ordinary. This blend defines Rosecliff's lasting allure. It stands as both a tribute to tycoons and socialites, and a creative haven for directors and visionaries. In contrast to the Breaker's commanding presence or Marble House's bold assertion, Rosecliff beckons with magic. Rather than a bastion of drive, it functions as a hall of whimsy, where celebrations persist indefinitely and each guest joins the show. Among Newport's grand estates, Rosecliff gleams as the dreamer's abode, fusing opulent excess of the Gilded Age with Tinseltown allure, its salty breeze still carrying faint strains of melody and mirth. Ochre Court, from societal splendor to Salve Regina University. Perched along Newport's jagged cliff path, with the ocean thundering below, rises a residence that appears transported from France's Loire Valley. Ochre Court, featuring its towers, sharply angled slate coverings, and intricate Gothic flourishes, ranks among the most formidable of Newport's palaces. Once alive with galas and soirees, it now resounds with the patter of learners rushing to lectures. Its narrative, spanning from the zenith of Gilded Age elite life to modern academia, illustrates how even the grandest products of fortune can transform into unforeseen legacies. Finished in 1892, the same year Alva Vanderbilt's Marble House debuted, Ochre Court was crafted by Richard Morris Hunt, Newport's wizard of design, who masterfully blended continental elegance with U.S. drive. Entrusted by Ogden Gohl, a prosperous Manhattan property developer, the project ran about $4.5 million, roughly $150 million in contemporary terms. Drawing from Loire Renaissance castles, Hunt endowed it with towering peaks, ornate window tracery, and carved stone sentinels that peer from the walls like sentries from a bygone era. The interior sprawled across 50 chambers on 3 levels, boasting intricate mantels, colorful glass panes, and overhead murals depicting scriptural and symbolic tales. Entrance faced a majestic stairway ascending under a vaulted dome, rivaling old-world basilicas. Ochre Court's reception room, adorned in gold accents and framed by lofty sea-view arches, swiftly turned into a prime spot for elite assemblies. Securing an invitation meant entering an enchanted realm. The Goulet clan, lacking the Vanderbilt's flash but wielding considerable sway, leveraged their fortress to solidify status among Newport's upper crust. The grounds cascaded toward the bluffs, where breakers furnished a natural crescendo. Within, ensembles performed under sparkling fixtures, as silken dresses glided and dialogues crackled with era's intrigues, affairs, and feuds. Still, Amid the splendor lurked the era's inherent tension, shared by countless Gilded Age retreats, erected on wealth eclipsing typical wages. It was a haven of stone and artistry, while multitudes squeezed into squalid dwellings. For Newport's privileged, Ochre Court offered leisure. For broader America, it epitomized the chasm between excess and everyday struggle. Following Ogden Gould's passing, ownership shifted to heirs. But as with numerous local properties, upkeep grew burdensome. By mid-century, sustaining such an enormous edifice proved overwhelming. Though Marble House and the Breakers gained rescue via the Preservation Society, Ochre Court charted another course. In 1947, the Goelet lineage gifted it to the budding Catholic school, Salve Regina College, today Salve Regina University. What was formerly a stage. The lavish gatherings for social events turned into the focal point of an academic haven focused on education, a shift that carried both unexpected charm and deep meaning. Learners started filling up lecture halls that had previously sparkled with crystal lights and painted ceilings. The majestic dance chamber now staged intellectual exchanges instead of elegant galas, while the balcony facing the ocean turned into a prime location for serene reading sessions over bubbly toasts. This change held a touch of wry humor. Picture the spectral figures from the opulent era peering at young scholars in casual attire and satchels hurrying down corridors where luxury coaches once dropped off elite visitors. Discussions that used to center on unions, estates, and riches have switched to topics like tests, seminars, and campus experiences. Still, this evolution in many respects rescued Ochre Court from the decay that claimed other grand homes in Newport. Learning, rather than lavishness, kept its structure intact. Nowadays, Ochre Court functions as the central hub for administration at Salve Regina University. Its church-like spaces and elaborate passages offer a constant echo of the extravagant period's influence lingering today. Pupils grab meals in areas where elite hostesses once schemed over invitation rosters, and faculty occupied desks in chambers that served as sleeping quarters for the era's visitors. The estate endures, not merely as a historical artifact, but as an active element in Newport's daily life. There's a lyrical quality to this progression. The residence that embodied unimaginable riches now represents access, development, and the opening up of privileged areas. Ochre Court illustrates that Newport's magnificent estates aren't locked in time like preserved specimens. They keep evolving to embrace fresh roles past the shine of that sumptuous time. Gaze at Ochre Court from the outside these days, and the panorama remains strikingly vivid. The vast ocean extending forever surges crashing against the bluffs, seabirds wheeling through the briny breeze. Yet, rather than horse-drawn vehicles arriving, you spot undergraduates traversing the grass, notebooks tucked under arms, voices of mirth drifting over the property. The castle-like building still pulses with vitality, still imposing, though its mission has moved from elitism to openness. Ochre Court tells a tale of reinvention, showing how one of Newport's most splendid estates transformed into something lasting longer than a venue for high society, a center for wisdom, connection, and a heritage that surpasses even stone. Rough Point, the controversial retreat of Doris Duke. Situated boldly along Newport's blustery southern coastline, Rough Point stands apart from the area's other lavish structures from that golden era. While the Breakers overwhelms through sheer size and Marble House captivates with its lavish stone and golden touches, Rough Point exudes a subtler authority, its form more subdued, its rugged barriers rooted firmly by the sea like an ancient bastion. Inside, however, played out a narrative of entitlement, oddity, and intrigue centered on one of the 20th century's most puzzling American icons, Doris Duke. Rough Point first rose in 1887 for Frederick W. Vanderbilt, part of the influential clan that epitomized the period. Crafted by the firm Peabody and Stearns, the estate drew from English manor traditions, featuring peaked roofs, towering stacks, and a formidable, somewhat somber stance across its 39 seaside acres. Distinct from the ornate French flair of Rosecliff or the revivalist splendor of the Breakers, Rough Point appeared built to endure, a dwelling capable of withstanding generations of tempests from the deep. Yet its path altered in 1922 upon acquisition by James Buchanan Duke, the magnate in tobacco and power whose wealth transformed the American South and established Duke University. His daughter, Doris Duke, took ownership of Rough Point at age 12 after his passing in 1925. Suddenly, she ranked among the wealthiest young heirs globally, frequently called the richest girl alive. Rough Point, with its broad meadows and sheer drops to the Atlantic, emerged as both her legacy and her weight to carry. As Doris matured, the property changed alongside her. In contrast to other Newport properties that morphed into static displays rather than residences, Rough Point stayed inhabited, a site where she imprinted her preferences, peculiarities, and inconsistencies. She crammed it with artifacts gathered from her worldwide journeys. Middle Eastern artworks, carvings from Southeast Asia, woven hangings from the Renaissance era, mingled with contemporary works. The rooms mirrored her diverse personality, a worldly blend that challenged the rigid magnificence of neighboring estates. Still, Rough Point's legacy ties inextricably to Doris Duke, a figure who both captivated and perplexed observers. She supported causes generously, backing health studies, cultural safeguards, and artistic endeavors, while guarding her solitude fiercely and frequently stirring up debates. Residents of Newport murmured about her atypical choices, from keeping camels on the grounds to her prominent romances. The isolated structure by the waves captured her blend of allure and enigma. The lasting controversy linked to Rough Point erupted in 1966 when Doris Duke piloted the station wagon that fatally collided with her longtime collaborator and companion, Eduardo Torella, right beyond the gates of the property. Authorities deemed the crash accidental, yet whispers of doubt persisted for years. Insiders suggested Torella intended to depart from Doris's service, and doubters pointed to odd details surrounding the event. The elite circles of Newport, already captivated by Doris's quirks, now grappled with a mishap that echoed Gothic tales. The entrance to Rough Point, previously emblematic of seclusion, turned into a focal point for murmurs of tragedy and concealment. Even amid the lingering doubts, Doris persisted in residing at and enhancing Rough Point for the rest of her days. She bucked the movement to convert Newport's grand residences into frozen exhibits while she lived, opting instead to maintain the place as a dynamic and intimate haven. The grounds stayed verdant, the rooms buzzed with her amassed artifacts, and the dwelling pulsed with her character. In contrast to the breakers, which solidified as a tribute to bygone eras, Rough Point evoked an inhabited refuge, quirky, secluded, and intimately linked to its owner's essence. Upon Doris Duke's passing in 1993, she bequeathed Rough Point to the Newport Restoration Foundation, the group she established years before to safeguard and restore the city's architectural heritage. These days, Rough Point welcomes visitors, yet it diverges from typical estates by remaining unaltered from Doris's era. Guests navigate spaces where her furnishings endure, her artworks adorn the walls, and her eclectic arrangements of curiosities populate the corridors. It resembles less a preserved snapshot of the Gilded Age, and more an immersion into the intricate psyche of one of America's most enigmatic heiresses. Lingering on Rough Point's terrace, now, with the Atlantic surging beneath, evokes both the estate's splendor and its spectral echoes. The structure radiates resilience, though the atmosphere weighs with recollections of Doris's youthful legacy, her unconventional maturity, and the scandals that shadowed her reputation. Diverging from the refined elegance of Rosecliff or Marble House, Rough Point owns its inconsistencies, displaying them like time-worn rock facing the ocean. Among Newport's array of opulent homes, Rough Point distinguishes itself. It transcends mere artifact of Gilded Age opulence, embodying instead the multifaceted narrative of a single woman's existence, her fortune, her enthusiasms, her upheavals, and her enigmas, all intertwined with a residence as steadfast and capricious as its former inhabitant. It serves as a reminder that Newport's majestic properties were never solely architectural feats. They encapsulated the dramas unfolding within. And for Doris Duke, those dramas defied the commonplace. Vinland, evoking mysticism and Gothic fancy. Nestled along Newport's renowned cliff walk, lies an estate that seems more a figment of legend and prose than a mere seasonal retreat. Vinland, finished in 1883, endures as one of Newport's most evocative properties. Whereas Marble House captivates through opulent Versailles-inspired magnificence, and the Breakers dominates with its vast Renaissance proportions, Vinland entices via ambiance, a blend of chivalric allure and shadowy introspection, as if its masonry aimed not just to awe, but to evoke ancient arcane realms. The property was envisioned by Catherine Laurenard Wolfe, heiress to the Laurenard tobacco wealth and a rare unmarried woman of her time, to independently commission such a lavish Newport abode. This self-reliance alone set it apart, given that most estates mirrored familial or marital aspirations. Vinland sprang from a solitary woman's foresight. Wolfe earned renown for her artistic inclinations. As a collector, benefactor, and profoundly contemplative soul, she funded sections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York and infused her Newport creation with her devotion to folklore and narratives. The estate's title, Vinland, stemmed from Norse mythology, the fabled vine-covered territory purportedly discovered by Leif Erikson long before Columbus. The Gothic edifice, crafted by the firm Peabody and Stearns, mirrored that poetic fancy. Constructed from ruddy sandstone featuring sharp roof lines, robust vaults, and colorful leaded panes, Vinland appeared more akin to a seaside cloister than a leisurely escape. Its aura implied timelessness, rooted on Newport's bluffs not in the late 1800s but in some obscured antiquity. Within, the residence mirrored Wolfe's aesthetic and ethereal leanings. The chambers boasted intricate wooden linings, adorned with pieces evoking antiquity and symbolism, in line with her preferences. A sanctuary-like aura infused the spaces, where sunlight filtering through the tinted glass cast ever-changing hues throughout the day. In essence, it formed a dwelling crafted for reflection, pulling inhabitants away from social whirl into quiet musing. Wolfe's demise in 1887 closed the estate's initial era, yet Vinland's allure deepened as it changed hands. During the early 1900s, the Burbank family, the estate crafted by the dynasty that erected the elms. However, Vinland never evolved into a venue for lavish soirees like many other Newport properties. Rather, it preserved an air of serene enigma, remaining somewhat detached from the extravagance of Gilded Age high society. By the mid-20th century, much like numerous Newport estates, Vinland confronted an unclear future. Yet, instead of deteriorating into decay, it assumed a fresh and surprising purpose upon purchase by Salve Regina University during the 1950s. This Gothic residence, with its fortress-like outline, integrated into an educational campus. Nowadays, it accommodates lecture rooms and administrative spaces as learners traverse its corridors each day. They pursue knowledge under vaulted ceilings where Catherine Warren once exhibited her artwork. Vinland's shift to a scholarly environment seems apt. The residence's essence of intrigue and creativity endures not via celebrations or spectacles, but via intellectual pursuits. For the pupils engaged there, the mansion's Gothic design acts as a prompt of history's significance in the peculiar intersections of affluence, creativity, and learning. Picture attending a literary discussion under stained glass panes that shimmer with the identical illumination Warren once cherished, or composing an essay at a workstation where ocean waves resound clearly against the rocks beneath. Vinland has fostered its own folklore as well. Residents murmur about spectral entities within its passages, its medieval aesthetic readily fueling narratives of apparitions. Certain tales claim Warren herself persists, a kind spirit overseeing the establishment that emerged from her dwelling. Others merely express awe at how a structure so immersed in Gothic fancy appears fated to spark supernatural lore. Believing in phantoms or not, it's undeniable that Vinland's ambiance, its substantial masonry, dimmed casements, aura of eternity, beckons such narratives. What distinguishes Vinland from Newport's other opulent dwellings isn't merely its design, but its purpose. Whereas Marble House and the Breakers were constructed to proclaim dominance and captivate competitors, Vinland arose to summon depth. It emerged from legend, fancy, and spiritual insight. Its endurance, redirected toward academia, highlights how these attributes can surpass even the most radiant fixtures or the most magnificent gathering halls. Standing in front of Vinland at present, with the Atlantic surging underneath and its Gothic spans ascending toward the heavens, reveals a contrasting aspect of the Gilded Age. Here, riches manifested not through immense proportions or magnitude, but through mood, in forging a dwelling that resembles a narrative etched in rock. Vinland endures as Newport's most bookish estate, a site where enigma and Gothic fancy persist, now enriched by the perspectives of scholars advancing its heritage onward. Isaac Bell House, elegance within extravagance, music. In a locale where marble edifices and French chateaux ascend like tributes to aspiration, the Isaac Bell House distinguishes itself. It avoids sparkling with gold-leafed vaults or dominating with expansive 70-room layouts. Rather, this estate communicates in a gentler tone, one that prioritizes balance, artistry, and subtle novelty over ostentation. In various respects, it represents Newport's design dissenter, a residence that spurned the ostentatious opulence of the Gilded Age while adopting a fresh American ethos, the shingle style. Constructed in 1883 for Isaac Bell Jr., a prosperous cotton merchant and the son-in-law of media magnate James Gordon Bennett Jr., the property was conceived by the renowned firm McKim, Mead & White, the era's premier architectural practice. Well, on initial view, the house could appear nearly modest beside Marble House or the Breakers. Its facade, covered in aged wooden shingles, forewent the sculpted stone and elaborate fronts of piers. But this restraint was intentional, a dismissal of borrowed European flair in exchange for an approach more natural and uniquely Yankee. The shingle style, which the Isaac Bell House aided in advancing, focused on cohesion and fluidity. Rather than segmenting the structure into strict zones or piling on decorations, the designers employed broad sweeps of shingles to merge the outer shell. The outcome was an abode that merged seamlessly with its surroundings, its contours and grains echoing Newport's seaside landscape. Where fellow estates towered imposingly, the Isaac Bell House appeared to emerge organically from the terrain. Within, the ingenuity persisted. The layout was expansive and adaptable, straying from the strict alignment typical of Newport abodes. Spaces transitioned smoothly via pocket doors and broad openings, fostering a feeling of fluidity. Expansive panes captured vistas of the grounds, drawing the outdoors inward, as terraces and loggias stretched habitation beyond. The furnishings highlighted skilled work with sculpted timber, visible rafters, and understated flourishes that honored raw elements over concealing them beneath lavish plating. For Isaac Bell and his kin, the house embodied not just fortune, but discernment. Bell formed part of a emerging. The Isaac Bell House appealed to a discerning group of Americans seeking to convey refinement without extravagance. During an era when the Vanderbilts were transplanting the opulence of Versailles to Rhode Island, the Bells opted for a forward-thinking, contemporary approach. Their residence emerged as a bold declaration crafted from wood and shingles, affirming that U.S. design could thrive independently. Despite its understated quality, the Isaac Bell House avoided simplicity altogether. It brimmed with discreet indulgences, a screen drawing from Japanese aesthetics in one spot, a staircase hall reminiscent of Dutch traditions in another, and a harmonious blend of international motifs united with poise. Strolling its interiors during the 1880s must have felt transformative, not due to bombastic splendor, but through an aura of seamless unity. Visitors likely appreciated how sunlight danced across the spaces, how areas transitioned fluidly, and how ease intertwined comfort with polish. The dwelling's prominence stemmed not just from its novelty, but from its symbolic weight. As Newport succumbed to a frenzy of lavish competition, the Astors clashing with the Vanderbilts for elite status, riches paraded in marble and gilt, the Isaac Bell House provided a serene alternative. It demonstrated that opulence needn't equate to surplus, and affluence could manifest through understated grace. Thus, it emerged as a pivotal influence of its time, a foundational element of the shingle style that molded residential building in America for generations ahead. As the 20th century progressed, though, the Isaac Bell House encountered the familiar challenges plaguing many Newport estates. Lineages evolved, wealth fluctuated, and maintaining such properties grew ever more burdensome. For a period, the structure fell into disrepair. Its shingles faded not by design, but through the relentless passage of years. Nevertheless, its historical value preserved it. In 1996, the Preservation Society of Newport County purchased the property, safeguarding one of the nation's premier architectural gems from obscurity. These days, the Isaac Bell House gleams in restoration, serving as a vivid testament to the Gilded Age's potential had more households favored moderation over lavishness. Tourists traverse its corridors, awed by the equilibrium of modesty and elegance. It still conveys a strikingly contemporary vibe, spacious, breezy, inviting, and intimately connected to its surroundings. In contrast to the breaker's imposing vastness or Marble House's ornate dazzle, the Isaac Bell House captivates through subtle charm. Picture yourself on its expansive veranda during a balmy 1880s evening. Ocean aromas waft on the wind, blending with the gentle creak of timber shingles and the murmur of company. Within, the warm flicker of lamps illuminates intricate woodwork and understated accents, rather than lavish domes or stone pillars. This was indulgence indeed, but re-envisioned, gentler, more reflective, more in sync with everyday existence. In Newport, where extravagance marked the epoch, the Isaac Bell House endures as an exceptional ode to moderation. It illustrates that, surrounded by magnificence, restraint can resonate with equal force, and at times greater allure than gold or marble ever might. The Elms, with its French-inspired grounds and ties to American prosperity. Stretching along Bellevue Avenue, amid a procession of Gilded Age estates, the Elms evokes a slice of France grafted onto U.S. terrain. Distinct from Rough Point's medieval whimsy or Kingscott's Gothic essence, the Elms exudes precision and structure, a purposeful nod to old-world nobility adapted to New World drive. Its exterior, inspired by the Château d'Asnières near Paris, proclaims sophistication. Yet its narrative, like that of all Newport grand homes, weaves threads of finance, influence, downfall, and unlikely endurance. Built in 1898 for Edward Julius Berwind, a Pennsylvania coal baron whose riches fueled America's rail lines, industries, and homes, the Elms was completed in 1901. By the early 1900s, Berwind and his spouse Hermione had embedded themselves in Newport's elite circles. Their seasonal retreat, however, demanded more than mere displays of fortune. It had to incarnate sophistication. For this, they enlisted Philadelphia designer Horace Trumbauer, whose creation merged timeless European finesse with practical American innovation. The Elms captivates at once with its balanced proportions. The limestone frontage ascends in rhythmic symmetry, every pane and balustrade aligned with near-geometric exactitude. Within, it unfolds as an exploration of splendor, expansive marble corridors, ornate drawing rooms, and vaults adorned with symbolic murals. Yet the true highlight of the Elms extends outside its confines. Its landscapes rank among the era's premier instances of structured horticulture. In the U.S., drawing from 18th century French paradigms, these gardens formed a triumph of form and drama. Layered platforms merged into broad meadows, water features danced in ornate pools, and stone gazebos dotted the vista. Exotic transplanted flora and intricate parterres instilled a regimented beauty that bordered on performance. For Berwind, the G.A., the gardens served more than just ornamental purposes. They functioned as a dynamic backdrop, an animated tableau where visitors could meander and appreciate both the natural beauty and the host's substantial wealth. Picture yourself pulling up to the Elms for a seasonal soiree. Coaches would align at the grand portico, ushering arrivals into a foyer aglow with sparkling crystal fixtures. Meals could be enjoyed on exquisite French china, accompanied by the gentle strains of orchestral pieces. Afterward, attendees might venture into the illuminated grounds where floral aromas blended with salty ocean breezes and water features shimmered under the night sky. In contrast to the bold seaside opulence of the breakers, the Elms conveyed a sense of noble serenity, a meticulously planned display of old-world elegance transplanted to the American landscape. Edward Berwind stood out as an intriguing personality, recognized among Newport's most stringent and methodical entertainers. He managed his residence with the same meticulous efficiency that defined his vast coal operations. The Elms evolved into a realm of customs, punctual meals, required attire, and unwavering respect for social ranks, unlike how Alva Vanderbilt leveraged her property for advancing women's rights. Berwind, on the other hand, employed his to emphasize stability, structure, and authority. His image as both demanding and intensely reserved lent an additional layer of decorum to the property. Still, like numerous other Newport estates, the Elms eventually succumbed to the passage of time. Edward Berwind passed away in 1936, while his wife Hermione had departed years earlier. The estate then transferred to his sibling Julia, who astonishingly resided there until 1961, reaching her mid-90s and keeping the grounds much as they appeared during its opulent heyday. Following her demise, however, the Elms' future hung in the balance. Lacking a successor to uphold the legacy, the manor confronted the imminent risk of being razed. In the early 1960s, a wave of demolitions swept through Newport's iconic residences, driven by soaring upkeep expenses and their fading relevance in contemporary life. With its expansive grounds and elaborate rooms, the Elms appeared headed for a similar end. But fate intervened in surprising fashion. The Preservation Society of Newport County, invigorated by triumphs in safeguarding the breakers and marble house, initiated an effort to salvage the Elms. And remarkably, they prevailed. In 1962, the organization acquired the property, transforming it into an accessible museum. This triumph extended beyond a single structure. It signified a pivotal shift in America's appreciation for its Gilded Age legacy. The Elms turned into an interactive educational venue, allowing explorers to navigate not just the majestic corridors, but also the concealed operational zones. Distinct from most other grand homes, the Elms exposed its staff accommodations and utility spaces to sightseers, unveiling the unseen mechanisms that powered existence in such a lavish domain. Guests could follow the routes taken by housemaids and valets, ascend the cramped passages they traversed, and grasp the sharp divide between the opulent drawing rooms and the grueling efforts that supported them. Nowadays, the Elms ranks among Newport's premier attractions, drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors annually. Its landscapes have undergone careful revival, with cascades operating once more as in Berwind's era. The rooms gleam with that familiar golden luster that once welcomed high society, but today they welcome all who enter. Saving the Elms highlights a key insight about Newport. Its palaces persist not merely due to their construction, but because communities decided to protect them. Gazing from the Elms Garden overlook today, the panorama remains identical to what Berwind once arranged, a scene of manicured shrubs, stone sculptures, and coastal winds wafting from Narragansett Bay. Yet, the significance has evolved. Once a secluded venue for affluence, it now operates as a communal repository of the past, illustrating how the riches of one era can, through conservation, inspire the creativity of future generations. The Elms transcends the role of a mere residence. It embodies the vulnerability and endurance of the Gilded Age, a dwelling that almost disappeared, yet persists as a site where continental landscapes intersect with Yankee prosperity, and where history flourishes amid rock and foliage. Château-sur-Mer heralded the dawn of Newport's era of grand estates, emerging well ahead of the breakers' cliffside dominance and marble houses' gilded vaults. On Bellevue Avenue, Château ascended in dignified splendor. It stood as one of the inaugural authentic palaces in Newport, proclaiming long before the Vanderbilts and Astors appeared that this serene seaside village could evolve into a theater for the nation's elite families. If the breakers represented the peak of Newport's Gilded Age narrative, then Château-sur-Mer served as its prelude, the residence that established the pattern for all that came next. Constructed in 1852 for William Shepherd Wetmore, a prosperous trader whose wealth stemmed from the porcelain commerce, Château-sur-Mer preceded the main surge of Newport's building frenzy by several decades. During an age when affluent Manhattanites often vacationed in simple bungalows, Wetmore engaged designer Seth Bradford to craft a dwelling comparable to continental chateaus. The outcome was a formidable edifice in the Italianate mode, centered around The mansion featured a distinctive tower, bracketed rooflines, and brownstone accents that infused the structure with an elegant European flair. The moniker Château-sur-Mer, or Castle by the Sea, proved fitting rather than hyperbolic. In contrast to the charming simplicity of most 1850s Newport residences, the Wetmore estate stood as a veritable palace. It served as the venue for Newport's inaugural grand social balls, predating Alva Vanderbilt's renowned costume galas by years. Visitors were awestruck by the vastness of the interiors, the sophistication of the decor, and the sweeping lawns adorned with rare trees sourced from distant continents. Yet, by the closing years of the 19th century, preferences had evolved. Italian influences yielded to the opulence of French Renaissance and Beaux-Arts grandeur, leaving Château-sur-Mer ripe for reinvention. During the 1870s, George Peabody Wetmore, the son of the original owner and future U.S. Senator from Rhode Island, hired architect Richard Morris Hunt to overhaul the property. Hunt, famed later for crafting the breakers, reimagined the home's insides in the lavish Second Empire manner, incorporating intricate wooden carvings, gold leaf accents, and profuse embellishments that mirrored the shifting preferences of the nation's upper crust. The updated residence emerged as a cornerstone of Newport's elite scene in the years preceding the Vanderbilt's dominant presence. Its magnificent ballroom accommodated the community's premier events, from diplomatic soirees to high society dances. In essence, Château-sur-Mer marked the opening chapter of Newport's metamorphosis. What began as a coastal settlement scattered with unassuming vacation retreats blossomed into a dazzling haven ruled by colossal estates, where the property's landscapes proved equally captivating. Encompassing almost 30 acres, they included meandering driveways for carriages, conservatories, and a remarkable array of mature trees, several enduring to this day. These grounds symbolized not just affluence, but a pioneering vision of a Newport retreat as a self-contained realm enclosed by stone barriers and ocean winds. Though Château-sur-Mer once epitomized the height of Newport extravagance, it appeared almost modest once the breakers and marble house reached completion. The Vanderbilt's marble corridors and Alva's lavishly gilded parlors outshone the Wetmore abode in raw splendor. Still, this disparity highlights Château-sur-Mer's pivotal role. As the pioneering grand residence, it paved the way, enabling Newport's evolution. Absent its influence, the Vanderbilts might not have selected Bellevue Avenue as their canvas. Like numerous Newport properties, Château-sur-Mer encountered hardship in the 20th century. With changing economic tides and the burdens of upkeep growing overwhelming, the Wetmore descendants fought to safeguard the holdings. Ultimately, the Preservation Society of Newport County took ownership, meticulously reviving the rooms and terrains to secure the survival of one of the locale's seminal estates. Nowadays, it functions as a museum and a testament to the inception of Newport's gilded era. Strolling through Château-sur-Mer evokes a distinct sensation compared to touring the breakers or the elms. It transports one not merely to a lavish epoch, but to its nascent phase, prior to the flood of excess, when splendor was still shaping its identity in Newport. The paneled corridors, thick curtains, and Italianate flourishes summon a prior iteration of riches, more imposing than preceding bungalows, yet not as domineering as subsequent fortresses. From its veranda, one might envision William Wetmore in the 1850s, gazing approvingly at his seaside endeavor, convinced it proclaimed his triumphs as boldly as any continental castle. Through his audacious construction choice, he established a template that successors would emulate and exceed. Château-sur-Mer transcends mere Newport architecture. It forms the overture to an age, the dwelling that elevated a humble fishing hamlet into a haven for tycoons and the site where America's era of grand estates ignited. Though surpassed in magnitude and sheen, its absence would render the narrative of Newport's Gilded Age treasures incomplete. Faded whispers of Newport's overlooked lesser retreats. When visitors envision Newport, thoughts typically rush to icons like the Breakers, Marble House, or Rosecliff, the towering emblems of the Gilded Age. These bastions persist, safeguarded as ornate relics, attracting throngs eager to witness the extravagance of America's elite dynasties. However, behind the luster of these celebrated cottages lurks a subtler chronicle. The narrative of Newport's vanished properties, the more modest villas and seasonal abodes that once peppered the terrain but have since crumbled into obscurity or vanished entirely. Their titles evoke little recognition, their magnificence largely scrubbed away, yet traces linger. Spectral remnants of a sumptuous realm destined for impermanence. Throughout the mid-19th and early 20th centuries, Newport drew not only the Vanderbilts and Astors, but a multitude of affluent clans escaping New York's sweltering summers. Summers in Boston and Philadelphia paled in comparison. Alongside every opulent residence lining Bellevue Avenue, a handful of humbler properties nestled amid winding lanes, undulating terrain, and secluded coastal nooks. Though lacking the sprawl of 50 chambers or imported European marble, these dwellings embodied their proprietors' desires to integrate into Newport's elite society. Certain such properties now linger merely as entries in municipal archives. Take Edge Hill, which once rose majestically along Bellevue Avenue until its destruction in the mid-20th century. The Waves, yet another overlooked manor, overlooked the sea but ultimately fell victim to flames. Additional ones were methodically taken apart when upkeep expenses grew unbearable, their ornate mantels and intricate timber details fetched by collectors or relocated to distant residences. Among the most evocative cases is the Reef, sometimes called the Bells, its skeletal frame enduring beside Ocean Drive. Formerly the domain of copper tycoon Theodore Davis, it suffered a blaze that hollowed it out, followed by years of abandonment with stone vaults defaced by spray paint and grounds overrun by brambles. This serves as a stark lesson that Newport's opulent Gilded Age fortunes couldn't always endure the unyielding forces of chronology, finances, and apathy. Numerous of Newport's underappreciated residences adopted designs mirroring their owners' individual preferences, diverging from the Vanderbilts' monumental visions. Shingle-style bungalows, colonial revival dwellings, and compact Gothic-influenced retreats dotted the urban scenery. These abodes may have contained only about a dozen spaces instead of 50, yet they signified lavish indulgence relative to the typical U.S. family dwelling of that period. For countless affluent clans, securing even a simple property in Newport granted entry to the uppermost social strata, a prestigious locale signaling inclusion. However, as the 1900s progressed, the sparkle of Newport's realm began to fracture. The introduction of income taxes, the Great Depression, and escalating expenses for sustaining expansive grounds wrought havoc. Whereas the biggest chateaus ultimately gained rescue through transformation into exhibits or academic institutions, the more modest ones frequently lacked such rescue. Devoid of the renown or structural prominence of their more imposing counterparts, they descended into disrepair. A few lay deserted, their ceilings caving in and landscapes smothered in vines. Others got parceled out piecemeal, their plots carved up for new builds, erasing any vestige of the structures that had defined them. Nevertheless, these overlooked chateaus imprinted their legacy on the locale. Residents recall tales of majestic abodes where kids frolicked on expanses now serving as asphalt lots. Faded images uncover porches and spires that have vanished, subtle nods to a bygone Newport. Select smaller properties persist in mere shards. A dilapidated stable, a pillar concealed amid tangled foliage, or an elaborate water feature isolated in a contemporary yard. These traces, subtly veiled in everyday views, function as relics unveiling a submerged era. Their disappearance carries a deep melancholy. As the Breakers captivates with its preserved splendor, the forsaken smaller properties narrate an alternate tale, one of transience. They underscore that the Gilded Age, despite its riches and ostentation, rested on tenuous bases. Lacking diligent safeguarding, even the most magnificent abodes could crumble into debris and recollection. Still, in their void, these obscured chateaus have acquired an aura of enigma. Adventurers in urban decay and regional chroniclers pursue their remains, capturing shots of the bells' weathered vaults or the solitary portals of erased domains. To certain observers, these fragments evoke stronger sentiments than the refined galleries of Bellevue Avenue. They expose the fragility beneath the affluence, the truth that neither marble nor masonry can eternally defy the currents of duration and oversight. Strolling Newport in the present, one could traverse a serene avenue flanked by contemporary dwellings without realizing a lavish manor once occupied the site, or traverse a pasture where livestock now roam, oblivious to the elegant soiree that once illuminated the darkness there. These spectral vestiges highlight that heritage encompasses not just endurance, but also erasure. Newport's overlooked properties might never attract the throngs that flock to the breakers, yet they weave an unseen stratum into the city's essence, a phantom realm of dissipated strongholds that harbored the aspirations of America's uppermost class. Ultimately, Newport's neglected estates prove as vital to its narrative as the enduring grand estates. They capture the ephemeral quality of riches, the mutable currents of prosperity, and how splendor can wane without guardians to defend it. Their dilapidation murmurs that amid a metropolis of strongholds, salvation eluded some. And at times, the most compelling narratives emerge from what has been omitted. Servants as narrators, the unseen labor force of Newport. Beneath each sparkling pendant light, each impeccably tended landscape, and each extravagant feast of Newport's gilded era, labored and unseen, during the Gilded Age, as the Vanderbilts and Astors waltzed in lavish gold-illuminated halls, it was the butlers, housemaids, chefs, valets, groundskeepers, and laundresses who sustained the magnificent properties. Their efforts were relentless, demanding, and mostly out of sight. Without their dedication, the opulent residences of Newport would have crumbled in mere days. In numerous respects, these workers led lives that mirrored those of their bosses in reverse. The affluent elite flocked to Newport for relaxation each summer, whereas the help came to toil. Properties like the Breakers required up to 40 staff members at the height of the season. Their shifts started well before dawn, when their employers were still asleep, and stretched far beyond the departure of the final partygoer from the dance floor at 3 a.m. For the employees, Newport served not as an idyllic retreat, but as a rigorous test of endurance and order. Take a butler, for example. He shouldered tremendous duties. He supervised the full operation of the home, handled the wine cellar, instructed valets in meticulous serving protocols, and ensured that each course arrived with impeccable punctuality. At a site such as the Elms, the butler needed to precisely calculate how long to chill champagne or arrange utensils to satisfy the refined tastes of guests schooled in European customs. No aspect could be overlooked, and errors were unacceptable. Down in the kitchens, the cooks and their assistants toiled in environments worlds away from elegance. As visitors savored elaborate French multi-course meals above, the cooking areas blazed with the intense heat of coal-fired stoves. Plates had to be assembled in strict order, transported via service elevators, and presented at ideal warmth. Any slip-up could result in immediate termination. Certain chefs hailed from Europe, tasked with recreating the sophistication of Paris along the shores of Rhode Island. Housemaids provided the essential support, tasked with cleaning vast chambers comparable to today's apartments, washing heaps of fabrics, and buffing countless expanses of marble and silver. Their routines were draining, monotonous, and intentionally unobtrusive. A skilled maid guaranteed that her labor went undetected. Her effectiveness lay in crafting the appearance of effortless, pristine conditions. Gardeners, meanwhile, managed sprawling landscapes covering many acres. At the Elms, the French-style gardens demanded ongoing trimming, irrigation, and upkeep, frequently directed by head horticulturists from abroad. Picture the strain of keeping topiaries and water features flawless, aware that even one fading bloom might draw the scrutiny of a discerning hostess or visitor. The majority of these workers resided right on the premises, in tight spaces like attics, cellars, or discreet annexes hidden from the primary building. Their surroundings stood in sharp opposition to the splendor they upheld. Dim corridors, simple metal cots, and communal facilities marked their daily existence. Still, Plenty embraced this arrangement for the reliable pay, lodging, and occasional status of serving a prominent dynasty. Among the staff, hierarchies were just as inflexible as those in the grand rooms. The butler held authority over the valets, the head housekeeper directed the female help, and the head cook governed the culinary domain with military precision. The employees maneuvered through their own sphere of advancements, competitions, and partnerships, sometimes forging ties deeper than those with the family they served. For a lot of them, employment was temporary, tied to the season. The households typically arrived in Newport around June and departed by September, so staff might trail after them to urban homes, rural properties, or even private vessels. Such a nomadic routine called for flexibility. One week, a valet might pour bubbly in Newport, the next, he'd be sorting luggage in New York. Nevertheless, beneath the ranks and tough conditions, glimpses of warmth emerged. The help frequently understood their superiors more intimately than the employers realized. They caught fragments of confidential talks in parlors, witnessed disputes in private, and grasped the habits and moods of the rich more thoroughly than outsiders ever could. A few evolved into trusted advisors, others quietly observed dramas that the press merely hinted at. The high society of the Gilded Age might have been Newport's visible emblem, but the servants formed its vital core. Absent their contributions, the stately homes would stand as empty facades. Although their identities seldom graced the pages of gossip sheets, they laid the concealed groundwork for the period's grandeur. Nowadays, as tourists explore the Elms or Marble House, certain heritage organizations highlight not just the reception areas, but also the staff dormitories and hidden corridors. These areas reveal the alternate narrative of Newport, a chronicle of toil and devotion rather than indulgence and extravagance. It underscores that each gleaming light fixture was buffed manually, every sumptuous banquet assembled in sweltering heat, every dress smoothed and arranged by an individual whose identity time has largely overlooked. In essence, the realm of the servants reflected the Gilded Age in miniature, radiant above, arduous below. Their accounts might lack the sheen of the breaker's gilded vaults, but they endure all the same. Vital to grasping the essence of Newport's character was its dual nature, a realm where contrasting spheres intertwined, one realm above stairs, the other below, linked by the delicate interplay of opulence, intrigue, rumors, and spectral presences. The shadowy narratives of Newport. During the Gilded Age, Newport shone with impressive exteriors, sparkling marble corridors, majestic stairways, and interminable summer galas where America's wealthiest clans showcased their influence. Yet beneath the crystal fixtures and sparkling toasts hid a contrasting reality, brimming with murmured indiscretions, sensational chatter, and eerie folklore. Despite its splendor, Newport served as a theater for obscurity. In the waning years of the 1800s, periodicals eagerly disseminated accounts of the upper crust's seasonal escapades. Each soiree, each promenade in carriages, each outfit selected by Alva Vanderbilt or Caroline Astor fueled journalistic frenzy. The masses devoured the extravagance, though innuendo sliced sharper than praise. Whispers of liaisons, economic downfall, or societal slights raced through Newport's parlors like flames. Though lacking modern digital platforms, the era's print media and oral chains forged their version of fame, and the estates along Bellevue Avenue provided the ideal scenery for such lurid reports. Take the uproar over Alva Vanderbilt's renowned masked affair in 1883 at Marble House. Attendees arrived as royalty, warriors, and mythical beings, clad in attire and regalia valued at thousands of dollars. The event solidified the Vanderbilts' ascent into elite circles, yet it ignited murmurs. Detractors grumbled about extravagance veering into tastelessness, while some pondered the true drivers of the Vanderbilts' dramatic spectacles: ambition, acclaim, and a drive to eclipse competitors like the heirs. Certain controversies delved into private matters. Cornelius Vanderbilt II, Lord of the Breakers, endured talk of cutthroat commercial tactics. Visitors may have admired the intricate tile work in his banquet hall, but outside those barriers, workers in his rail dominion endured grueling circumstances. The buzz around the Vanderbilts extended beyond attire. It probed ethics, questioning if empires forged through dominance could genuinely purchase respectability. Affairs and hidden passions added further layers. Newport's brief summer cycle intensified with extended nights, impromptu meetings amid foliage, and excessive bubbly. Hushed talk of entanglements among wedded elites floated discreetly, sidestepped by publications but relished by the staff who witnessed all. The notion that beneath every idyllic union image lurked a concealed truth enhanced Newport's mystique. Yet apart from the living's tattle, Newport harbored its portion of phantom lore. Residences vacant for much of the year bred abundant haunting yarns. Sea Terrace, the Carey Mansion, with its Gothic vaults and shadowy passages, gained notoriety as a set for the TV show Dark Shadows. But prior to film crews, residents murmured of odd noises and shapes gliding through its chambers. Rough Point, Doris Duke's abode, bore perhaps the bleakest legend. In 1966, her stylist and intimate associate, Eduardo Terrella, perished in an auto crash at the property's entrance amid details that persist in doubt. Though ruled accidental, suspicions of deliberate mischief lingered around Rough Point, solidifying its status as one of Newport's most curse-ridden properties. Even Belcourt Castle acquired a supernatural aura following its transformation into an eccentricities museum in the mid-20th century. Patrons reported peculiar feelings in the dance chamber, chills along the hallways, and vintage armor exuding its own uneasy vitality. Believer or skeptic, such accounts reinforced the idea that Newport's villas transcended mere rock and stone. They embodied recollections and, at times, unresolved matters. Intrigue also crossed social divides. As the elite reveled in luxury, Newport's laborer districts simmered with bitterness. Domestic help toiling in sculleries and outbuildings ferried tales of their masters homeward. Occasionally, these became chatter within their circles, accounts of inebriated outbursts, kin disputes, or subtle malice. Beneath the dazzle, Newport remained a compact community, and confidences migrated swiftly. Into the 1900s, as numerous grand abodes deteriorated, the atmosphere of notoriety and apparitions intensified. Forsaken properties like the Bells turned into haunts for youth, who etched tags on surfaces and challenged peers to explore the dilapidated grounds after dark. The ghostly hush of deserted salons, formerly alive with mirth and melody, offered prime fodder for ancestral haunt legends. Remarkably, these ominous accounts rounded out Newport's portrait. The Gilded Age encompassed far more than mere riches and elegance. Yet, it delved deeper into themes of drive, jealousy, extravagance, and the personal imperfections concealed under fine fabrics and ornate detailing. The tabloid rumors, hushed intrigues, and eerie passageways serve as reminders that the architects of Newport's grand estates were far from infallible deities. They were ordinary folk susceptible to errors, intense desires, and concealed truths. Strolling along Newport's cliff walk these days means gliding past these imposing stone edifices and pondering the mysteries they hold. Their majestic exteriors stand preserved, yet if those structures could speak, they'd recount tales not just of sophistication, but of deceptions, emotional wounds, and unsettled spirits. Newport's shadowy underbelly, the rumors, scandals, and spectral occurrences, continues to hover in the atmosphere, every bit as integral to its narrative as the sparkling crystal fixtures, the struggles to maintain them, and the efforts to shield the estates from ruin. By mid-20th century, the opulent residences of Newport, those lavish symbols of America's Gilded Age prosperity, no longer represented enduring legacy. Instead, they posed as delicate, unwieldy liabilities. Lineages had faded, wealth had dissipated, and upkeeping a 50-room, ethery, with vast manicured landscapes turned into more of a liability than an asset. The opulent interiors that once welcomed the Vanderbilts, Ayres, and Berwins now crumbled into neglect, with dripping ceilings and grimy light fixtures. Certain properties were sealed away, others offloaded at bargain prices, and a few razed completely. In the 1950s, it seemed Newport's prized architectural gems could disappear for good. The danger was palpable. Shady Leah and Ochre Lodge were lost. Additional properties got carved up, their expansive grounds repurposed for building projects. Even iconic dwellings were viewed as burdens, not assets. Marble House, the Elms, and the Breakers, now pillars of Newport's character, were once regarded as costly albatrosses, too expensive to warm or fix, too mismatched for contemporary lifestyles. To their proprietors, the Gilded Age was a distant memory, and these estates merely outdated remnants few cared to sustain. The shift arrived in 1945 via the creation of the Preservation Society of Newport County, started by dedicated locals aiming to rescue Hunter House, an 18th-century colonial gem. Their achievement highlighted a key insight: Newport's built legacy held worth transcending private wealth. It could anchor the area's sense of self and, in time, bolster its livelihood. What started as a modest band of advocates grew into a drive to safeguard the full scope of Gilded Age splendor. The initial major challenge emerged with the Elms in 1962. Following Julia Berwin's passing, the property faced sale and probable destruction for $116, a remarkably low figure. The Preservation Society intervened promptly, acquiring the home and making it accessible to all. Crowds rushed to experience the splendor of Newport's bygone era. Abruptly, the notion emerged that these residences could thrive as public exhibits. Building on that, the conservation campaigns progressed like a strategic push. Marble House, left vacant for years, underwent revival and debuted in 1963. The Breakers, the pinnacle of Vanderbilt Holdings, came next, its 70 chambers evolving into the organization's flagship and most lucrative site. Every property demanded massive funding, roofs mended, stonework buffed, landscapes renewed. But the risks yielded rewards. Visitor numbers exploded, reshaping Newport from a waning resort spot into a vibrant showcase of Gilded Age history. The Preservation Society didn't tackle this solo. Affluent donors and personal endowments were vital contributors. Figures like Doris Duke, via her Newport Restoration Foundation, acquired and revived numerous modest historic dwellings, preserving the town's allure well beyond the grand estates. Absent her actions, blocks of colonial and Victorian abodes could have fallen to the demolishers of post-war expansion. Rescuing these structures proved arduous. Advocates encountered doubt, budget gaps, and outright opposition from builders eyeing the vast lots for housing tracts. Upkeep expenses stayed sky-high, ceilings dripped, heating systems broke, walls fissured, and each fix-up exposed fresh problems. Wins seemed fleeting, demanding ongoing oversight to prevent relapse into deterioration. Gradually, though, these conservation fights altered American perspectives on the Gilded Age. Dismissed earlier as garish overindulgence, it gained recognition as masterful design and shared legacy. Tourists who once mocked the Vanderbilt's ostentation became captivated by the artistry and sculpted paneling, the ingenuity of stone flights of stairs, the allure of European-style grounds. Through preservation, Newport's estates gained renewed purpose, not as exclusive retreats for the rich, but as communal emblems of the past. In our time, the outcomes of those struggles shine brightly. The Breakers attracts thousands upon thousands of guests flock to Newport annually. Ticket revenues from these sites sustain the upkeep of the city's other magnificent properties. Marble House, Rosecliff, and the Elms gleam like relics from a bygone era of opulence. Their grand halls now accommodate guided excursions, matrimonial celebrations, and even movie productions. Lesser-known gems such as Chepstow and the Isaac Bell House endure with dignity, offering lessons to sightseers that Newport's legacy extends beyond lavish spending to encompass design ingenuity, creative advancements, and the relentless march of history. Still, the effort to safeguard these treasures persists as a relentless struggle. Rising oceans endanger the scenic cliff walk, fierce tempests erode the rugged facades of coastal villas, and the enormous expense of upkeep for these immense edifices shows no sign of easing. Every cold season demands fresh restorations, fresh appeals for funds, and fresh discussions on striking the right equilibrium between public entry and careful stewardship. The ornate finishes require perpetual restoration to avoid crumbling into decay. Yet the very existence of these dwellings today serves as proof of the determination from advocates who championed their cause. Absent the Preservation Society, absent generous benefactors, and absent the awareness that heritage can serve as a legacy deserving defense, Newport could now boast rows of high-end apartments instead of stately marble residences. These conservation efforts underscore that the Gilded Age transcended the tales of the dynasties who erected these estates. It encompasses the successive eras that opted to sustain them. Every mended glass panel, every buffed railing, every revived landscape bed symbolizes more than mere antiquity. It embodies a deliberate commitment for tomorrow's world to honor, cherish, and shield the past. Newport's grand homes have evolved beyond vulnerable artifacts teetering on destruction. They persist as sturdy testaments, vibrant emblems of an epoch defined by grand aspirations, extravagance, splendor, and unyielding guardianship despite the challenges. Transitioning from the Gilded Age to the era of tourism, Newport in the present pulses with a fresh social rhythm. Stroll along Bellevue Avenue on a balmy summer day, and you'll catch the buzz of contemporary crowds. No longer the tinkle of fine glassware or the swish of elegant attire, but the patter of casual footwear, the buzz of tour groups, and the snap of smartphone lenses. What were once bastions of elite privilege have flung their gates wide. Envisioned as a haven for America's wealthiest clans, these properties now rank among New England's top attractions. Here, spectral figures from the opulent past mingle with throngs of travelers, bridal ensembles, and nearby residents rekindling their cultural roots. This metamorphosis unfolded gradually. Midway through the 20th century, Newport's villas hovered between erasure and renewal. Razing took several of the town's modest homes, while others lingered abandoned, weathering corrosive gales and abandonment. Yet, through the dedicated labors of heritage guardians, charitable supporters, and an escalating intrigue in the nation's lavish backstory, Newport pivoted from a waning bastion of privilege to a prominent exhibit of collective memory. In the current day, that bold wager has yielded dividends. Over 1 million individuals explore Newport's storied residences yearly, anchoring them not only in Rhode Island's traditions, but also in its financial vitality. Every estate contributes to this contemporary revival. The Breakers, formerly Cornelius Vanderbilt II's emblem of indulgence, claims the title of New England's premier historic site. Crowds queue up to admire its 70 chambers adorned with intricate tiles, polished stone, and golden accents, lingering to envision banquets around a 12-foot banquet table beneath dazzling fixtures. Marble House greets guests with its palaces echoing Versailles, alongside displays highlighting Alva Vanderbilt's surprising contributions to women's rights advocacy. Rosecliff, famed for lavish masquerades, now welcomes nuptials and cinematic teams, its dance floor eternally tied to the Great Gatsby. More modest abodes that couldn't compete with the Breakers' grandeur have carved out renewed purposes. The Isaac Bell House, with its understated shingle motif, earns acclaim as a pivotal example of U.S. design. Ochre Court, once the Goélé clan's retreat, integrates into Salve Regina University, its corridors alive with scholarly voices instead of symphonic strains. Rough Point, maintained in Doris Duke's personal style, offers a more personal vibe than majestic scale, allowing explorers to immerse themselves in the world of one of the 1900s most unconventional figures. However, Newport's shift toward tourism extends beyond the structures themselves. These villas have morphed into icons representing Rhode Island's essence. In a region frequently eclipsed by bigger states, Newport has forged its identity as an emblem of U.S. extravagance, legacy, and drama. Souvenirs, publications, and online posts brim with snapshots of sweeping stone steps and seaside gardens. For Rhode Island, these estates transcend historical artifacts. They fuel the now, generating millions in annual visitor income. Nevertheless, the influx of sightseers has altered interactions with these abodes. Where ballrooms once resounded with, once reserved for lavish soirees of the elite, these grand estates now welcome charity balls and local gatherings. The hidden servants' passages, once bustling with servants ferrying glasses of bubbly, today guide crowds of sightseers eager to uncover the harsh truths of Gilded Age servitude. Far beyond mere upkeep, conservation efforts have reshaped these homes entirely. They're no longer mere icons of disparity. Instead, they've evolved into educational hubs where guests ponder the splendor alongside the flaws of America's opulent history. These properties also form the backbone of Newport's vibrant event scene. Outdoor concerts, talks, and gallery shows transform the grounds into vibrant venues, merging timeless elegance with modern flair. Take the Elms Gardens, for instance. They serve equally as picturesque settings for snapshots and as showcases for botanical wonders. Meanwhile, Belcourt Castle, once an oddity drawing idle glances, now buzzes with activity as a prime spot for nuptials and intimate celebrations. The crumbling remnants, such as the Breakers Outbuildings, draw adventurers, city hikers, and creators who draw equal muse from faded glory as from lavish excess. Naturally, the influx of sightseers poses hurdles. Striking a balance between safeguarding and openness remains an ongoing battle. Crowds tread heavily on ornate woodwork. Heating and cooling setups labor to shield vulnerable artworks, and the endless parade of tourists threatens to turn profound historical sites into mere photo ops. Stewards of these treasures liken their efforts to a delicate balancing act, sustaining the estates for communal enjoyment while preventing that very engagement from causing wear and tear. Escalating ocean surges and fierce coastal gales heighten the stakes, given Newport's precarious perch by the sea, leaving so many gems exposed to environmental threats. Still, this era of visitors has bestowed upon Newport a gift absent in its gilded heyday: inclusivity. Domains formerly guarded for a select circle of tycoons now open their doors to throngs from afar. An educator from the Midwest, a clan from South America, or a learner from the Northeast can stroll the very corridors, trod by the Vanderbilts and Astors, witnessing up close the trappings of extravagant fortune and contemplating its implications. In essence, this broadening access amounts to a form of reckoning, transforming the estates from emblems of elitism into communal treasures of legacy. Strolling the cliff walk these days reveals both narratives intertwined: the majestic stone facades shining in daylight and the ceaseless stream of explorers infusing fresh energy into their legacy daily. Newport has shifted from the epicenter of elite summertime revelry to the heart of Gilded Age recollection, a spot where history and the here and now collide at every turn. Ultimately, today's Newport transcends simple conservation. It's about renewal. Its estates no longer embody solely the dominance of the privileged. They embody the inquisitiveness of the masses. Having endured blazes, abandonment, and threats of demolition, they've transcended the visions of their original architects. No longer secluded badges of prestige, but communal beacons of the past. Newport's visitor boom guarantees that the echoes of yesteryear, whether murmured in intrigue, proclaimed in festivities, or lingering in forsaken shells, will resonate for future eras to come.